Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really cool new frontier for artificial intelligence. We all know AI is great at writing, at coding, at analyzing, but can you teach it something as deeply human as, well, good taste? So let's start with a pretty big idea. AI models today are absolute workhorses. I mean, they can process unbelievable amounts of data, run super complex simulations, and write code that's, well, it's elegant. But they're missing this critical human spark, right? The intuition, the foresight to know which ideas are even worth pursuing in the first place. Researchers have a name for this. They call it scientific taste. It's really the key difference between, say, a helpful lab assistant who can follow your instructions to the letter and a true visionary, someone who can actually chart the course for brand new discoveries. So, that brings us to the crucial point here. How in the world do you teach an AI not just the how of doing research, but the what and the why? How do you actually give it the judgment to spot an idea that is genuinely groundbreaking? Okay, so how do you teach a machine something as abstract as taste? Well, the very first step is you have to make it measurable. So let's dig into how these researchers managed to break down this, seemingly intangible concept into cold, hard data that an AI can actually understand. The first thing they did, their first move, was to give scientific taste a really concrete definition. See, this isn't about personal preference, like whether you like one theory over another. It's about one thing, the ability to identify research that is going to have a real, measurable impact on the scientific world. And here's where it gets really clever. They realize that the scientific community already has a system for voting on impactful ideas. It's citations. Think about it. A paper that gets cited hundreds and hundreds of times is, by definition, seen as more impactful than one that only gets a few. It's this perfect built-in feedback system. So this sets up a really clear challenge for the AI, a very simple task. Learn how to tell the difference. Learn to distinguish between the ideas that are going to kind of fizzle out and the ones that are truly going to ignite new discoveries. All right, so now that we've got a way to measure taste, how do we actually teach it? Well, the researchers developed this incredibly elegant method for training an AI to think like a seasoned scientist. Let's break down how they did it. They call their method RLCF, which is short for reinforcement learning from community feedback. Now, instead of just relying on a small handful of experts, what they did was use the collective wisdom of the entire scientific community as it's reflected in all that citation data to act as the AI's teacher. The whole process just flows beautifully through three key stages. It all starts by collecting that community feedback. Then, you use that feedback to train an expert judge. And then that judge turns around and coaches an innovative thinker. So, first things first, they gathered a huge data set. And to make it a fair fight, they would take two papers published around the same time, in the same field, and then just ask a simple question. Which one got more citations? You see, this gets rid of any bias from older papers or totally different scientific fields. And they didn't just create a few of these. They created nearly 700,000 of these pairs. Let that sink in. That forms this massive collection of taste tests for the AI to learn from. Just an incredible amount of data. Okay, next up, they train the first AI, the scientific judge. You can kind of think of this AI like a master sommelier, but for scientific papers. It was trained on hundreds of thousands of these pairs to develop a really sophisticated palette for what makes research impactful. And finally, they trained the second AI, the scientific thinker. Now, if the judge is the critic, the thinker is the artist, the creative winemaker. Its job is to generate new research ideas. And that expert judge model is right there, acting as a coach, running these little mini tournaments and rewarding the thinker every single time it produces a winning idea. So the big question is, did it actually work? Let's take a look at the results and see just how well these AIs really learned scientific taste. The scientific judge? Oh yeah, it was a huge success. In fact, it was even more accurate at predicting which research would be impactful than some of the world's most advanced AI models. And what's really impressive is that its taste wasn't just stuck in the past. It could accurately generalize and predict the success of scientific papers that were published after its training was complete. And get this, its judgment was surprisingly versatile. Even though it was only trained on computer science papers, it could still spot promising research in totally different fields, like biology. Now, that suggests it learns some really fundamental, universal principles of what makes a scientific idea valuable. And crucially, its judgment actually lined up with human reviewers. The AI was able to predict which papers would get high scores from human experts, which proves that it captured a sense of taste that really resonates with people working in the field. And what about the scientific thinker, the idea generator? Well, it was also a massive success. After all that coaching from the judge, its proposed ideas were preferred over 81% of the time when they were put up against ideas from its original untrained version. That's a huge improvement. So these results are obviously really impressive, but what does it all mean for the future of science? What are the big picture implications of an AI that can be taught something as uniquely human as taste? Well, the researchers' key takeaway here is a powerful one. Scientific taste isn't some mystical, magical, innate human thing. It's a skill that can be broken down, that can be quantified, and, as this research clearly shows, can be taught to a machine. This research really opens the door to a whole new era of human-AI collaboration in science, one where the AI doesn't just crunch the numbers for us, but actually helps us ask the right questions. It leaves us with this really tantalizing thought. What amazing breakthroughs become possible when we pair our human intuition with an AI that has truly impeccable scientific taste?